Hey, strong people. Happy New Year's. Kalle Beck here. Got another episode of the Strong Talk podcast for you. And this week it is presented by our starting strongman training templates. Go to strongmanprogram.com for more information on our training templates. Until January 31st, the templates are just $10 per month, and you get monthly programming for the sport of strongman, designed by our team of experienced coaches. Workouts are delivered through an app, straight to your phone, no printing out spreadsheets. Sign up, $10 a month. Price goes up after January 31st. And as an added bonus, listeners of this podcast, is an exclusive discount. Get the first month free. You can also sign up for a year plan and get 2 months free. After January 31st, the training plans are going to go up to $15 a month. But if you sign up now at strongmanprogram.com, they will be $10 a month for life. And of course, also use code STRONGTALK to get your first month for free. You can check it out. Comes with a free guide, a 15-page step-by-step guide on proper technique for most popular strongman events, and other info that is exclusive to these training templates. strongmanprogram.com, code STRONGTALK. This week's guest is Zack McCarley. I've known Zack since I got started in the sport. My first contest was his second contest, and he was a lot better than me and remained so, and from there he became one of the most accomplished lightweight strongman that the United States has ever produced. He's also an All-American wrestler in the NCAA. He won a lightweight pro card, or middleweight as it's known now, 231 pro card, 11 top 10 nationals placings. He's also he wants to pass on his knowledge for the sport and what he's learned, sometimes the hard way, with his website strongmantechnique.com and doing seminars. He has an upcoming seminar at Inner Beast CrossFit in, I believe it's Oregon City, Oregon, in January. So you want to check that out. And there'll be links in the show notes so you can sign right up for that. And spots are extremely limited for Zack's Strongman Technique seminars to just 10 people. So if you're interested, this is a great opportunity. And you're going to learn a lot more about Zack in this podcast. We talk about a lot of things, his start, what's led to his success, and what he wants to do now. He also has a very interesting job, which I wanted to get into a bit more, but hour flew by. Going to have Zack on for another podcast so we can get more into the nitty gritty and how he wants to use what he's learned in the sport and everything he's accomplished to pass it on, so you can learn what he did in 10 years of strongman in 2 or 3. And that's why we talk about why the sport's progressing so much, and that's because we all learn from the people that did what we want to accomplish before us. So Zack is a great one to learn. You can follow him on Instagram. That's Zack McCarley, ZackMcCarley, and on Facebook at Zack McCarley as well. And his website, Strongman Technique. There's a couple articles up there discussing his different types of training programs for strongman, how he approaches, how strongman scoring system works out, and he's going to put up some more info on strongmantechnique.com. So you want to check that website as well. And of course, visit startingstrongman.com. Go to amazon.startingstrongman.com to do all your holiday shopping. Really appreciate everyone's support for doing that in December. I guess not really doing your holiday shopping, but you can buy anything there and get a couple bucks back, and it helps do this show. I'm gonna stop stumbling over my words and let Zack talk. So without further ado, welcome this week's guest, Zack McCarley. Welcome to Strong Talk Podcast. Kalle Beck here, joined by co-host Mike Battolino and our guest for this week, Zack McCarley. And it's New Year's Day. How are you doing, Zack? How's your New Year's? How's 2017 treating you so far?
It's pretty good. I woke up without an alarm. That's new, right? Slept in a little bit, and then drove about 20 minutes in the snow and got to work, and just on a little lunch break right now. So it's a good day so far, I think.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite part about when I did actually quit my job is that I don't really wake up to an alarm very often, even though I get up earlier than I used to. It's weird, but
That's funny.
who knows? It doesn't make any sense, but
It's getting older, Kale. That's what it is.
is that what it is?
I think so.
So, one of
And doing what you love too.
Sure. Yeah, it makes it a little easier. Like, oh, I want to go do all this instead of avoid it. But appreciate you taking the time to talk to us on your lunch break, and we'll try to get through it. Of course, I remember when I first met you, and I want to get back. You've won countless national titles. In multiple different weight categories and disciplines and stuff. So, but when I first met you was my first strongman contest in, what was it, 2008 or 2007 in Fresno, which was actually also Brian Shaw's first pro strongman contest.
Yeah, was that the one with the super heavy white car deadlift?
Yes, which no one got except for you and like 3 other people, and you were what, 17 or 18 at the time, I think.
I was either 18 or 19, and I'm pretty sure I zeroed, but that was definitely 2007. Yeah, no, I remember that one. I remember just being like, man, I was pretty upset that I zeroed at that.
Well, in my mind, I remember you hitting it, so that so you shouldn't be that upset. But I think but I remember, you were young, and like I wasn't, it seemed like, you're 18. I think I was like all of 21, so I was so much older. But at the time you're like, oh, damn, this guy, and you were barely maybe 200 pounds at the time, and it was impressive for me. And personally, it made me want to keep competing, because I'm like, well, this guy's not, he's roughly the same size as me, and even younger, and doing good. So even though I did completely horrible at that contest, it it's like, okay, there's a chance, you know what I mean? So it was
yeah, no, totally.
It was fun. So getting into that, like, how did you actually get into the sport of strongman?
Well, when I was younger, like many people who are in the sport of strongman, I saw strongman on television, World's Strongest Man, and I was just like, for many years I was just like, wow, that's so cool, I wish I could do that. And it'd come around the next year, man, that is so cool, I wish I could do that. And then it was actually in 2006, I was watching it and I was like, man, I wish I could do that. And I just like, all of a sudden it clicked, and I was like, man, why don't I do that? I could do that. I could do that if I wanted. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go. Like, let's do it. And so next day I hopped online because, well, I went to the library and hopped online because we didn't have internet at my house.
Yeah, this is and, 2006. There's it's a little different than now, where we just kind of, we have everything available to us on our phone.
Yeah, no, totally. And so I went to the library, hopped online, started doing some research, found this thing called North American Strongman. I'm like, what is this? And I'm searching through all these contest listings, and I'm like, man, okay, Nevada, California, Connecticut, like all these. And then there's just like a million East Coast contests. I'm like, man, why? There's like nothing on the West Coast. Like, maybe I need to find somewhere else to compete. And then I saw one in Oregon. And, for the viewers that don't know me, obviously don't know where I live. At the time I was living in Maple Valley, Washington, which is around the Seattle area. And I was like, Oregon, that's close enough. I'll drive and I'll sleep in my car if I have to. I don't care. So I was like, I'm doing it. Fine. I'm doing it. And I looked up the entry form, and I remember it was Oregon's Strongest Beaver held at OSU, Oregon State University. And I looked at the name and it said Grant Higa, and I was like, okay, I need to call this guy. And I called him and I'm like, hey, This is Zack McCarley. I just saw that you're going to be holding a strongman. Actually, I need to rephrase that. It used to be Zach Nims, but I called him. I'm like, hey, my name's Zach. I'm interested in doing a strongman contest, and I heard you're putting one on in Oregon. I'm from Maple Valley, Washington. I just wanted to speak with you for a little bit and get some details. And the next day he called me back, and he's like, you say you're from Maple Valley, Washington? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, dude, that's where I live. And I was like, what?
Perfect.
And so it was just this completely serendipitous, it was kind of like a miracle that we lived in the same vicinity. And Grant Higa took me in, and I got 2 training sessions before I went to that contest and got demolished because at the time that was a pro-am contest, and it was bringing in some of the top heavyweights from all around the nation. And I took I think it was 11th out of 13, but I didn't care. I mean, I went and I did my best, but then that left kind of a taste in my mouth where I was like, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a lot better. So I think if I would have won, my first contest, I probably wouldn't have come back. I probably would have been like, yeah, whatever. But the fact that I got whooped so hard, then I had to sign up for another contest, which actually happened to be that Fresno contest where we met.
Yeah.
So that was actually my second contest.
Yeah, another pro-am, which I had my story is very similar to yours, where I'm like, I have to do this. And, back then there was not as many contests as there is now by any means. And, especially on the West Coast.
Not a chance.
Yeah, it's not, so I'm like, well, this is my only shot I'm ever going to do it. We're both pretty young. So you have that mentality that, 6 months from now is forever. When in reality, it's like, yeah, you could just wait for one that's not going to be like, people are on the cusp of getting their pro card. But, you're clearly a very competitive guy, and you come from, a wrestling background. So I think your mentality for that's going to be a little different than most, where it's like, because something was so hard, you want to do it again. But you kind of have to have that mentality in strongman to keep pursuing it, because it is so hard, and it never gets easy. No matter how strong you get, it just keeps getting harder, because then you're going competing at a higher and higher level.
Exactly. Yeah, and you can always throw more weight on.
Yeah.
You can always carry something further.
Definitely. So that was the and you were still young at this time, and then let's cut a little bit forward to like what ended up being your first national championship. I think you won teen nationals in, what would it be, like 2008, 2009, around there?
It was actually that same year that we met, 2007.
Year? Okay.
So I guess to give you the quick rundown, like my first contest was Halloween 2006, and then I went through a college wrestling season, and then like a couple weeks after that season ended, I went to Fresno. That's where we met, competed, and then Dion Wessels actually happened to like see me compete in that contest, and she was like, wow, that was really impressive. I'd like to invite you to teen nationals. And I was like, well, I don't know, and I went to I was talking about it with my stepfather, Ray, and like, I don't know, I don't know if I want to go. I chatted with Grant about it, Grant Higa, that is. And I remember sitting in the airport, and Ray, Grant Higa, and Brian Shaw were all like, man, you got to do this. Like, you just got to go for this nationals. Like, you don't want to miss out on this. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, and so they convinced me in the Fresno airport. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I went to that and signed up for heavyweight teen nationals, because I was like, I want to compete against the best, and weighed in at like 205 and squeaked out a victory by like 1 point against this big corn-fed country boy from who knows where. But yeah, no, it was a good experience. So that was 2007.
Awesome. Yeah, it was it's hard to when you have, of course, Brian Shaw wasn't Brian Shaw of 2016, 17 and 2000, back then in 2007, this is 10 years ago, he was just getting his start as a pro, but still he was still Brian Shaw. He still had that presence. He's still, 6'8" or whatever. And, and Grant, of course, it's kind of hard to say no to that. But yeah, from there, you always, I'd say you're not the prototypical, like you said, you went and you barely won against like some giant corn-fed, strongman from the Midwest somewhere or something like.
I'm trying to think if that was Trey.
Maybe.
It very well might be Trey Mitchell.
I think Trey's a little younger though.
We might be able to look up the results, but yeah, it was. I just recall. I want to say he was from North Carolina though, and he was like a really good presser. Mm-hmm. Like he had the state record for his age group for like the junior division in the USAPL, for bench press. But like he was already somewhat decorated, but
sure.
We're just gonna say it was Hafthor Bjornsson, and that's how you discovered him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, actually, that's a whole nother story. Hafthor and I competed before, so he stomped my ass promptly, but it's all good.
Yeah, it's still pretty cool to say that you competed with him. But what I was getting at is I wouldn't say that you're like the prototypical strongman, like when people think of it, because you've always been very efficient in the events. And I think you've carried over your conditioning and work ethic and capacity from wrestling into strongman, because that's all, most everyone knows or, has heard how hard training for wrestling is. And you kind of carried that over into strongman where, you don't really look like, this giant corn-fed person, or even you take like someone you've competed with plenty of times, like Sean DeMarinis, where you look at him and you're like, oh, that's a strong man. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to say it in a bad way, but you don't look, the prototypical strongman, but you've still had a tremendous amount of success in the sport. Just going kind of a different avenue. What do you think has contributed to your success in the sport?
Well, that's a tough question with a really long answer, but the quick rundown on it, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, wrestling was the foundation of it all. I started wrestling when I was a sophomore in high school, and that completely changed my life. Just learning how to work so hard that you're like literally just about to pass out and you want to give up. And then, then you kind of break through and it's just, people who are listening who are wrestlers or wrestle at a high level are familiar with breaking a wrestler. Mm-hmm. Like the term breaking someone, just like, when you wrestle until you don't think you can anymore, and then, then you swap partners again and you wrestle somebody fresh and you're completely tired and they just whoop your ass. And it's, but that mentality of just doubling down, like when you think you've given it all, double down again, just like, and keeping going. And, that mentality of wrestling really, and the fact that, I had a season of college wrestling under my belt when I came into that Fresno show I did. So basically when I started strongman, and standing across the mat alone from someone else who wants nothing more than to hurt you and, embarrass you in front of all these people that you've sacrificed time with and trained with. I mean, that's really what it comes down to in wrestling. And, they want to show that they're better than you. And when you come from that background, it's like, you come to strongman where everybody's super friendly and like, oh man, you should try it like this. And it's just like, wow, this is easy. Like, it's way less pressure. And, and then especially getting in with it was really the perfect storm for me because I got in with Grant Higa. He's an incredibly knowledgeable individual who, you know, taught me how to do so many different things in strongman. He's like, oh no, you should approach it like this. Oh, you should try this. And just, you know, training with him, and he and I would push each other to the limits, and people like Tyler Scott, you know, it was just, I don't know. It's a very long and involved answer, but basically I just had great conditions for being a good athlete in the sport of strongman. And I had a natural aptitude for the sport.
Are you wrestling again? Are you still wrestling?
No, this was no, I don't wrestle anymore. It's
okay.
That was quite a while ago.
Did you go back to? Have you gone back to like in 15? You went back to wrestling, though, right? 2015. Or am I making something?
No. When I was finishing up grad school, I went back to college wrestling, and I wrestled for the Central Washington University Wrestling Club, which competes in the NCWA, which is National Collegiate Wrestling Association, and wound up taking 6th at nationals, which made me an All-American wrestler. Woo!
Nice,
congrats.
But I do have to mention that organization, that association, is really somewhere. I would say they compete somewhere around the D2 level. You know, that association is typically used for moving schools from D3 to D2 or from D2 to D1. So you have these schools that are in flux that are looking to move up in a division, and it levels out at nationals. You're competing at like a D2 level. So those who are listening, you know, that are familiar with like Iowa State or Penn State or Cornell, you know, D1 schools, those guys would probably whoop my ass. So, yeah.
You're always so humble. But
they haven't won America's Strongest Man.
That's true.
Who? Sorry, pardon?
None of those guys have won America's Strongest Man.
Yeah, and none of them won it 3 times either.
there you go.
Yeah, so if there was any sort of wrestling put into a strongman contest again, like the old, you know, sumo days or anything, you'd probably fare pretty well, you think?
Oh my God, I'd probably rip someone's leg off.
Yeah, what do you think of Kaz's technique and stuff in some of those old matches? I'm sure you've watched it.
Those are like a more sumo style, and like I don't know the exact rules, but I mean, you know, I've heard a lot of stories of that contest and that circumstance, and he was like hurt and just like slapping his head and like yelling and freaking out and intimidating his opponents and stuff like that. But I think that's totally a completely different style, and I don't know if you could even take a knee. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah,
you know, one of the basic things in wrestling is. Yeah, one of the basic things in collegiate wrestling is taking a shot. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you usually have to hit a knee to take a shot. And if you were to hit a knee in a sumo match, I think that's like a point for your opponent. And then you start back standing. So there'd be no point. But,
sure.
But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, you do well. We're sure. But, yeah, so
I try.
Yeah, so getting to your, you know, 3 times, you know, 105 America's Strongest Man victories. Let's go to when you won your first Open Nationals to secure your pro card. Which contest was that?
That was 2010 in Reno, Nevada. Yeah, no, I remember that one well. It was. Yeah, it was a tough contest, and I remember going into day 2. It was just like, it was me and I want to say his first name is Jeff, but I want to say his last name is Pearson.
Yeah,
and he was
I think you got both of those right.
He was yeah, I definitely knew it was Jeff, but I want to say Peterson, but I'm almost positive it's Pearson. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it was just me and Jeff, like, duking it out essentially at that nationals for the title. And, I want to say that I would have won regardless, but, second to last event, he actually dropped the frame on his heel and just like ruined his ankle. Like, he couldn't come out for the last event. So when you compete in a contest and you give up an event, like, he couldn't do the last event. When you give up an event like that, you lose like 70 points and there's zero opportunity to even podium,
Mm-hmm.
even if you've won every event up to that point. So, but yeah, no, it was a good contest. I remember loading all the stones. I was the only guy to load all the stones at that contest. And it was, a lot of excitement, like, set a national record for the dumbbell that was, I think it was 10 or 11 reps with 150 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And now women are repping 150.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Yeah, someone had to do it first is the way I see it. Because, like, I hate when, people, what was, the best yesterday isn't good enough to, tomorrow. In any sport, really. So it's just, it doesn't mean that, a certain number wasn't good. It was great back then. It's just, anything's going to evolve. It's just how it works. It's just, but it is interesting because, I look back at some of my numbers too, and it's just like, okay. I want to get back to that, but that's not anywhere good enough now.
Yeah, no, the sport does evolve, and it's exciting to watch it, and I know that you play a key role in a lot of the live streams that are going on, and I think that that's awesome. I think that's completely necessary for the sport to grow and for people to actually start seeing what's going on in strongman. So, thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, you're
awesome.
No, thank you. You've done a lot for it, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I try to do what I can when I can. It's sometimes not always easy, but that's a story for another day. But
yeah.
So yeah, you won your pro card, and then you quickly you went, you became, 105 kilo, 231 pro. What did you find any big difference between competing at the amateur level and then competing at the pros? Or I'm pretty sure you had pretty immediate success at it, but what was the main difference making that transition?
Like you said, I did find immediate success with it. In 2010, I won my pro card. In 2011, 12, and 13, I won back-to-back America's Strongest Man for the 105 kilo category. But
Mm-hmm.
I did find that the pros were tighter knit. You know what I mean? Like, sure. And there's like a mutual respect of, like, everyone at that level has kind of like duked out through the amateur ranks, and everyone there has at some point either won a really big contest or a nationals to acquire that pro card. And so everyone is dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, in a contest, everyone is dangerous, and it's kind of just a matter of who can dial it in for that day. But everybody's super cool too, because in strongman you do it because you love it. You don't do it for the money. So when you get to the pro ranks, it's there's really just that mutual respect there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I would say that and there's just a lot less people.
Yeah, it's easier to be tighter knit when there's like 10 of you. But
yeah, no, for real. It's when you going from contests where there's like 60 or 70 people competing, and then going to contests where there's only like 10, it kind of changes strategy a little bit too. Like, you really can, when there's only 10 people, you really can give up, like, you can finish mid-pack and fight your way back
mm-hmm.
to win a contest. And you can, like, calculate that out. Like, you can be like, how many reps do I need on this? Okay, I'll do that many reps and then I'll rest because I don't want to be fatigued for the last event that I'm going to win, you know. But if you do that at an amateur nationals, then, you know, you just can't. Like, you'll get, you know, you finish mid-pack and you know, your chance of winning is shot. It's done.
Yeah, at amateur nationals, when you have, you know, 30, 50, you know, maybe even 70 people, if you're the 231 in your class, like getting a slide penalty on a yoke might be the difference between first and eighth or 10th. You know, it could be even more.
Worse, yeah.
It could be a 20 point.
Sure.
Just getting a slide penalty, you know, costs you 2 seconds. That could be that could be 20 points you lose right there. So yeah, it's almost, you know, the level that the pros are competing is harder, but yeah, winning those giant contests like nationals is almost harder in a way, I think.
I completely agree. I think the hardest fought contest I ever had was probably that 2010 nationals for the pro card, because the field is so deep at the national level at the amateurs that if you have a little slip up, you're done. You know what I mean? Like, it's over. Like, you can't have a bad event. If you have a bad event, then you have lost the contest.
Absolutely. So got a lot I want to cover with you. So to kind of speed it up, what was like, you've traveled overseas a couple times to compete. What was like one of your most memorable contests as a pro? You know, that really stood out.
Well, as a pro, I got to think about that one.
Or overall, like, you went to China a couple times, you know, some of the America's Strongest Man. Like, what was a cool experience where, like, okay, all this work kind of, you know, made it because I got to, you know, have this experience?
Yeah, I think the second trip to China was probably the most, like, I don't know the word for it, but I think that was my favorite officially pro trip. You know, I got to see that culture, and I was a little bit more prepared for it, and I knew what to expect because I'd gone there before, and I got to travel with Sean DeMarinis and you know, a couple of the other pros, and it was just awesome having those guys there and like strategizing and competing against the Chinese, and the culture there, like, is really interesting.
It's a trip.
Yeah, it was, not to mention the lack of toilets for those people who have just stayed in the U.S. their whole life. You know, a lot of countries don't have toilets. They just have bowls, like, in the ground, like a porcelain bowl on the ground that flushes. And so people actually squat, and it's like, where's the toilet? But there's, yeah, I remember in China on that second trip, I was sleeping, and then all of a sudden, like, I heard this noise outside. What the heck? And we're like 10 stories up, and so it's got to be a loud noise. And it like woke me up, and I was like, what the hell? And I like stumbled over the window and looked outside, and there is just like the streets are completely full with people. I'm like, what time is it? And I look at the clock, and it's like, it's 1 a.m. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And apparently in China, they wake up in the middle of the night, and like, you know, there's like kind of a nighttime, like they'll go to sleep kind of early, and then they'll wake up in the middle of the night, and there's like nighttime activities. Like, people will go outside and like have a drink with some friends, or like meet up and just chat. People were like literally dancing in the street and like exercise, like, you know, kind of like Chinese square dancing is the best way I could describe it. And it was like, what the hell?
Yeah, weren't
and
prepared
this
for
was
it.
like the day before the contest. It was totally a trip, and I still don't really know what that was all about. But I mean,
so I'm gonna have
like,
to ask my
what?
wife about that because she's Chinese. So we're gonna get to the bottom of this.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
we'll get
please
to it.
do.
Why do they
that's
square
pretty
dance
weird.
in the street at 1 a.m?
I'll call my mother and father-in-law. Hey, what's going on with this?
Yeah, that was in Zhaoshan. So
Okay.
I don't know if that'll help, like, I know that, in China there's several different like social cultures, so I don't know if that'll help narrow it down, but
Sure.
yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I think
But I do have to say I think my favorite international trip was Norway in 2015. It was just it was good. It was good all around.
Yeah, let's get into that one for sure. Of course you won. You're a 105. You won America's Strongest Man 3 times. Blah blah. Yeah, no big deal, right? But then you took a little break. You then just show up to compete at the Strongman Champions League, 90 kilo, World's Strongest Man. What prompted you to like just come out of, I hate when people use the word retirement in, a sport like this, because it's not like you have you don't have a contract. You either just show up to do a contest or not. But you weren't competing, and then what made you want to come back to do that contest at also a lighter weight class?
Well, let me think back. In 2014, like early 2014, I decided that I was, I had a poor performance at Pro Nationals. I had a poor performance at Open Nationals. There were several contests where I felt like I didn't put it together very well, and I was disappointed with that. And I kind of came to the conclusion that, like, at that time I was in grad school. I was focusing on a lot of different things, and I was like, I have to pick one of these. Like, I thought I could multitask all of them, and I can't. And so I decided there isn't a profession in strongman, for people that don't know who are listening. As a lightweight, you can't make a living. No. Like, you just can't. And that's the unfortunate truth, at least at that time. Hopefully sometime in the future, it'll be a reality. But at the time, that was the truth. And I was like, okay, well, I have to focus on this professional life that I'm trying to build. And so I walked away from the sport of strongman. I said, okay, I'm done, at least for now. And I'm going to focus on chemistry. And, so I'm working my way through grad school and, staying really busy. And I did do that wrestling season, which kind of, it held me over athletically. I always feel that I have to stay, physically active, or else my mind kind of wanders and I don't do well. If I don't feel like that physical exertion, my mind doesn't work properly. But that's just me. Anyway,
I think
getting back to the story. Yeah, getting back to the story. I had walked away from strongman like 9 months prior to this, and it was like late 2015, and I saw online that there was going to be a world championships for 105 and 90 kilo, and I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. And I was like, well, I wonder if they're going to go through with it, because in the past, I feel like they've announced world championships and they've canceled them.
Yeah.
I was looking at it and I was like, okay, that's cool. And, thought nothing of it, and came back like a month and a half later, and I saw that there's like a competitors list and like all this stuff. And I'm like, oh wow, and I'm looking at the page on Facebook and I'm like, man, that's really cool. And I see the events and I'm like, oh man, I would freaking wreck people at these. Like,
good events for you.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. And I was looking at the list and I was like, yeah, man, if I had an invite to that, I would go, like, for sure. And I was chatting with Pat Castelli about it, and he's like, man, you should tell someone that. Like, if you really think you're willing to come back, like, then tell someone. And I was like, okay. So I went on the page and typed, hey, this looks like an awesome contest, and if I got an invite, I know I'd definitely go. And a couple people saw that. The promoter saw that. Aaron Mullen saw that, who was someone who I believe really advocated for me to get the invitation.
Mm-hmm.
But a little while later, it was announced that I got an invitation. And so I was like, well, shit. 'Cause I was still in grad school and I'm still doing all these things. And I'm like, I can't say no. Like, cause I've wanted this. I wanted this for a decade. Like, I wanted this so bad. I've dreamed about it. And I never got, I did get one invitation to a Worlds prior, but I had really fucked up my back, like bad. And I had to decline that offer. And so I declined it. And Sean DeMarinis and Johnny Wasico actually wound up going, and they did well. I think they took 3rd and 6th respectively. But anyway, this was the first time that I had received an invitation that I was healthy, and I was like, oh, I am not saying no. I was like, okay, I'm going. Like, and I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. I don't know how I'm going to, like, I will swim across the Atlantic if I have to. Like,
Yeah.
Like, and so I was like, okay, like we're gonna figure this out. And so I accepted the invitation. I trained for 9 weeks, took 1 week rest, and then went there and wound up. Day 1 was 3 events. It was a field of 28 athletes. I took first.
There you go.
And then day 2 was 5. Or no, is it 4 or 5 events? I can't remember.
I think it was 4. Sounds
and
sounds
it was a field
right.
of. Yeah, I think it was 4. I think it was 4 as well. And there were 12 athletes. The field had been narrowed down, and that was like the finals. And I took first, second, first. So I would say I did pretty well.
yeah, you dominated, but I want to go. Yeah, and I think you also set a world record in the axle clean and press for 90 kilos as well.
Yep.
But
yeah, that's a funny story in itself. But anyway.
But what made you decide to do it at 90? 198 pounds versus you did most of your whole career at 231. Is this because you're already lighter because you were wrestling, so you cut weight to get down to that?
It was a mixture. It was a combination of reasons, really, and one of them was I had came out of a wrestling season a few months prior, and I was lighter. Another reason, and probably the more pressing reason, was I had been training weightlifting for quite a while at that point, like probably 4 or 5 months, and I was already down to like 210 body weight, like 210 pounds, which is real close to the 94 kilo weight class, which is the weight class I was planning on competing in. And so I looked at it and I was like, well, there's a 90 kilo and there's a 105 kilo. And I have an invitation to this contest, but they didn't specify what weight. So I guess I can choose which weight I want.
That's
like,
nice.
Yeah, I was like, And, I'm already most of the way down to 90 kilo, and I could just continue dieting and make it down to 90 kilo, or I could try to put on like 20 pounds. No, I'm not going to be able to put on 20 pounds.
Absolutely.
It's just like that would be ridiculous. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll go down to 90. And so I went down to 90 kilo, which actually was a funny thing. As soon as I started training like the strongman style again, my body just like started putting on muscle again, like it used to have. It was just like, oh, I remember this. And so actually, I didn't have an extremely difficult time getting down to 90 kilos, but it was harder than I thought it would be. It was definitely harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Probably like the second hardest cut I've ever made. So.
And that's including wrestling.
Yeah. No, that includes wrestling.
Yeah. So I want to, of course, we talked on the phone privately before this that you want to do some, seminars coming up, but so I want to get your, what your plans are for that, or what you're looking to offer if any gym owners or anything, like any listeners that would persuade gym owners to have you at their gym, would expect, because obviously you have, a wealth of knowledge to offer. So I want to get into that and how you structure your training, and which I feel is probably a little bit different than the prototypical way strongman train people train for strongman. So
Yeah.
I think they kind of go hand in hand, like what's your approach and what you'd want to teach people, So how do you set up your training structure, and what have you found, works that's, led to your success as an athlete, and, with your training partners, et cetera, compared to what you normally see?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the first things to consider when like someone is setting up a training program is availability of the equipment,
Of course.
and what specific equipment do you want to gain a mastery of in preparation for a contest. And so for me in the beginning, I was training events once a week. It was Saturday, like many people do. It was the only day that I had enough time to go drive, 45 minutes or however far away the implements were, and then train on them for, I would train on them for like 4 to 6 hours, just depending on the day. And, that worked, and I had success with that. But in the end, when I had more access to implements, I found that I really liked to train events 3 times a week. And it wasn't, that's not training every event 3 times a week. That's
Sure.
training different events every day of the week, and, varying frequency with different types of events, because different types of events have different strains on the body. It can get kind of complicated, but basically I found that helped me to train at a higher intensity for each of the events. And if I kept my conditioning in check, I could put it all together on the day of the contest, which led to a better performance. So I've trained both styles. And I actually have a good article outlining each of the styles on strongmantechnique.com. So I can shoot you that link after this chat. But anyway, those are the 2 different styles that I've tried. Those are the 2 different styles that are popular across the board, and really the only 2 styles that you could train. But yeah, I prefer, if you have access to implements a lot, and if I have access to a lot of implements, I will train events 3 times a week. And then sometimes I'll throw in a 4th day of like kind of miscellaneous, like, training muscle groups that really don't get worked much, just to ensure that there's no stagnant muscle groups. There's no kind of muscles that wind up getting weak and pissed off and wind up causing you harm later, essentially.
Yeah, kind of like a little pump bodybuilder day for some accessory work. Hit some
Totally.
Hit some rear delts, hit some all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, rear delts, buys for the guys, curls for the girls, whatever. Yeah. I don't judge.
Whatever works. Absolutely. Yeah, and of course you have your website, Strongman Technique, and you've been putting, strongmantechnique.com, and you've been putting a couple articles up on that. So what are the plans, for that you want to keep contributing to the strongman world, and how you could, help people out with that, help people in their own journey?
So right now I'm at an interesting point in life, right? I'm starting my professional career, but I'm also wanting to stay in the strongman community, and I want to be able to give back the wealth of information that I've attained, give it back to the community, and help people to move past a lot of things that hung me up, a lot of things that cost me my health for periods of time, and I see some, I see some people putting on seminars who are completely unqualified to do that, and they're giving people information that could damage them.
Are you talking about me?
No, I'm not talking about you.
Someone with
it's not
hair
always
that's
about
not
you,
nearly
Kalle.
nice.
It's not always about you.
Oh.
No. I feel that you're completely qualified to teach
I'm
people.
kidding.
You've been there. You've
Thank
competed. Yeah. Yeah. No, but
No, I understand.
I just want to get back to my point I'm trying to make, I guess. I just want to give good information to people, and I want to help prevent some of the same mistakes that I made from happening to other people, because that's why the sport that's why people are stronger now than they were when you and I started competing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the sport has progressed, because people keep learning, people keep changing, people keep, it's not like people are just flat out stronger than they used to be. I mean, if you look back in the late 80s, there were still people that deadlifted 900 pounds. And even now there are people who, deadlift around the same weight. You know what I mean? It's not like the physical form of humans has become superior to what it used to be. It's just people have learned how to train. People have learned nutrition. People have learned technique. They've had the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of people who have gone through all of that and made mistakes and found the things that work. And then they see the things that work and they push through with healthy bodies instead of broken ones.
Yeah.
So I want to be part of that.
Absolutely.
I want to be part of the next generation of people who are coming up in this sport and who can, make huge strides, set new world records, go out and break my world record at the axle clean and press. I don't care. Like, if you break it, good. Like,
how much is
I'm glad.
How much is that record?
It was 365 at 90 kilo body weight, 365 pounds, but I took 400, 398 technically, and almost got it. But I'll shoot you guys the links and you guys can post them up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway.
No, I completely agree. That's kind of, our thoughts are very similar on this, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, because I want to get your words out there as well. And one of the reasons why
Mm-hmm.
I do the podcast, but because, what it took me to learn what I know 10 years, now people learn it in 2. So then they're that much, and they haven't made the mistakes, which, like I feel like I could have another good contest run as long as I don't hurt myself. And I'm sure you feel the same way. Like if you decided to do another contest, one of the reasons why you probably performed so well at the 90 kilos, because you did have that 8-month break where you weren't just beating your body into the ground, So
probably, actually, yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's great that you want to help give back, and I'd like to get that word out there so you can. So if people do if you want to do a seminar, you're up in Pacific Northwest area, but I'm sure you're willing to travel. Like, how would you set one up? Would it be 1 day, 2 day, or how's it work? And what would you cover with the gyms out there?
Well, I prefer to do 1 day seminars.
Mm-hmm.
And I can, I've taught 3 event seminars before. I've also taught 5 event seminars. So that would be like in 1 day we cover 3 events, in 1 day we cover 5 events.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer the 5 event but it also is like, it's kind of daunting because
definitely.
That's a lot to cover. And at the 5th
work.
event, people are usually pretty worn down and like, oh my God.
It's like a whole
I always
contest.
tell people to bring plenty of food, and get plenty of rest, and even, take 3 or 4 days before the seminar and rest, because I like to push people hard in my seminars. And so basically, the way that I structure them is a very logical approach. And I think that makes it so people can attain that knowledge really quickly. I'm kind of a logical person, and it kind of makes me bad at marketing. But anyway, it makes me a good teacher.
Sure.
And it helps me to convey ideas and information to people in a way that most people can understand intuitively. And the way that I approach it is, it'll be like, this is a log. It has these specific parameters in competition. For those of you who are interested in competing, this is what you can expect. And so the first thing I look at is myself. What am I wearing? Am I wearing slick shorts? That would be a bad idea. Am I wearing a slick polyester shirt? I wouldn't suggest it. Like I basically, I walk through and start to finish, kind of go through everything. I mentioned, some people like to wear a raised heel, like weightlifting shoes, while they do this event. Some people don't. You can wear knee sleeves. You can wear elbow sleeves. You can, some people find it helpful to wear wrist straps during this event. And then we go through the technique of the event, and then I turn them loose on the implement. I watch them and give constructive feedback right there on the spot. And if I feel that the group that I'm working with has progressed sufficiently by a certain point in time, I will give them a second technique that they can work on, and then I'll allow them to work on that for another period of time, and then we turn over to the next event.
Gotcha.
And start the whole thing over. But yeah, it's a really kind of logical, systematic progression that I like to teach people in, and I feel that it helps people to absorb that information and be like, oh, like, they're not trying to memorize sequentially what's happening. I'm trying to teach them why we're doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can justify it in their own mind, and they can say, oh, this is why. And then even those individuals who have a knack for the sport, they can say, oh, well, I was doing this because this reason. That's probably applicable to other events too, and, that's how people get better.
Yeah, I think that's a big takeaway that a lot of people don't realize with strongman is that a lot of the events, even though it's a different implement, are very similar movements, and it's almost the same kind of little fixes apply to everything. Where, like, if you're cleaning a log, it's a very similar movement to loading an Atlas stone. Of course, you need different hand placements and particulars for the event, but you're working the same muscle groups, and there's a lot of carryover, and overlap if you're training all of those events. I don't know if you
completely. If you can, no, and I completely agree with that point. For that specific example, I think it's someone who has learned how to use their hips properly.
Mm-hmm.
And be able to roll something up their body. Those two motions are very similar. And I feel that anyone with, a lot of experience in strongman would have to agree with that.
Yeah, you'd imagine, but not every.
So.
Yeah, someone's always going to disagree about everything, is what I've found. But I know you got to get back to work. But do you want to touch on a little bit of what you're currently doing for your occupation, or if you want to compete again, or I guess that's the first one, you want to touch on that? I think it's interesting.
Sure. Well,
quickly, or however long you have. I have all day.
No, I'll give you a quick rundown, but yeah, no, basically, like I mentioned, right now I'm focusing on my career. I'm also focusing on strongman technique. What I do professionally is I'm a quality assurance manager at Analytical 360, which is a marijuana analysis lab that works, that works in the recreational marijuana industry in Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
And we communicate with the state, essentially testing marijuana and marijuana-infused products, communicating if they're safe for the public to consume through microbial testing, cannabinoid testing, terpene testing, residual solvent testing. And my role in all of that is to make sure that all the instruments are calibrated. We keep logs on those calibrations. We keep logs on, that all of our instruments, including our scales and pipettes, are still accurate. Basically crossing T's and dotting I's. And, and a little bit of method development, but that's a quick rundown on what I do professionally. And then, strongman technique, we already spoke about that. Athletically, like I mentioned before, I don't think I can go without being physically active. Mm-hmm. And so right now I'm just kind of lifting for fun, which is really different because I've never actually done that.
It's so weird, isn't it? Like I'm still trying to adjust bizarre. To it. It's just weird where you don't have some goal where you have to prove something at a set date. It makes it fun in a way, but it's also hard. Like it's also not
Yeah.
fun, not as fun in a way. I don't know. I'm still trying to adjust to it.
Yeah, no, same here. I mean, like, there's a possibility that I would return to strongman in the future, but I kind of feel like I competed for real close to 10 years, and I escaped the sport healthy, which is something that virtually no one can say.
Yeah.
I mean, and it mostly comes back to me enjoying helping other people and watching their progression more than me actually doing well in a contest. I don't feel like I have to do well in any more contests. Like I've done what I want to do, and it was in fact more than I ever officially set goals for. I remember my original goal when I started training strongman was like, I want to see how well I can do, and then it was, I want to get a pro card. And then it was, I want to do well at this contest because I think I deserve this. Like, I worked harder than those people and I wound up doing really well. And then it was like, being a world champion, like, yeah, like, let's do this. But by the end of it, I was just like, it was goal after goal after goal. And it kind of became a death march. It was just,
Yeah.
When does it end?
Yeah,
And
it's a hard. Yeah, it's weird where you're just training for this date and that date, and you're at some point. I think you'd agree with this, that you almost stop enjoying it at some point. It feels like an obligation.
Oh yeah, there were times that, looking back on it, I have fond feelings for all of the training.
Mm-hmm.
But I recall many times when, I would get done with the training session and be like, I fucking hate this. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Like, why am I doing this? Like, I remember times very specifically when I was, I remember after some of the medley training that I was doing at Ellensburg CrossFit, I was training between classes in the middle of the day alone, and I would do this medley, and at the end of the medley I would literally just like collapse, and I would just lay there and like just try to catch my breath for about a minute and a half. And there was once or twice where I was like, what if I die in here? Like,
Jeez.
What if I actually die? And I was like, well, good. Because at that point I still had goals that I felt that I needed to accomplish. But at this point in my life, I feel that, my goals I've completed all of them. And the most enjoyment that I can get out of strongman much anymore is helping other people and watching the reaction in them as a technique clicks, as they realize, this is how I need to move my body. This is the position I need to be in, and then I'm so much more powerful. This is why I was making this mistake before, but now I'm not, because I understand what's happening with this movement better. And just watching the joy and hearing the joy, because people, they fortunately, they love to give feedback that's like, wow, that cue really helped me a lot. And so then I can take that and I can give that cue to other people and just watch it grow and proliferate. And that's the most enjoyment that I can get out of strongman anymore, I feel. So
Totally relate, and I would echo that sentiment. It's funny because we were talking about how it can get to the point where you don't enjoy it, but then you want to then make more people do the same thing. But it is enjoyable, and there's just to that point. And I feel like I know myself, I try to echo the point to people to keep it fun, and I'm assuming you do too, where you don't, like, in order to achieve something like great, you have to let it consume yourself, and that's fine, but just let it know that eventually has to end, or else you end up just beating your head against a wall at some point if you lose sight of keeping it fun. And
Yeah, no, totally. And, I feel like the thing that I like to communicate when I'm doing a seminar is you can take whatever path you choose. You know what I mean? Like you can have this be recreational and functional, and you can never compete, and that's perfectly fine.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like the ability to lift a heavy object will carry over. Say you have a rock in your garden that you need moved. Well, guess what? If you can lift a 160-pound rock, you can sure as heck lift that 70-pound rock in your garden and carry it out. All of these things are, you can apply them however you choose. And for those individuals who want to compete, that's perfectly fine too. And those individuals who want to take it to the very top level of competition, that is completely fine too. It's your choice, but you choose your path, So it's not like, for me as a technician and a clinician, it's not any different teaching someone. There are certain tricks that you can do in competition, and I do go over those when I'm teaching people, but those individuals who are just training for general health, general ability, I mean, those are good things to know anyway.
Yeah, it's just those little tricks are just learning how to use your body more efficiently, which is going to carry over to anything. If I have to unload a couch, and I know if I'm thinking about center of mass and keeping it over my hips as much as possible and lifting it in the center, or grabbing over here and then under on this side, like you look at like big objects when you have to move things differently after you've trained a lot of strongman, because you've done it for sport basically. So it does carry over, and it especially helps when you're like me and you don't have friends and you have to do this stuff yourself.
So, Kalle, are you echoing the same sentiment that it's important to be #stone lifting ready?
Sure, I guess so, Mike.
Is that a hashtag?
No, there's a thing called gas station ready that Josh Bryant came up with, but I'm thinking maybe it needs to be like, we can come up with a stone lifting ready thing.
Yeah, I think you need to start it.
Walking by like a big rock, and then you look around, and then you just go pick it up and #stone lifting ready.
You'd never know when you will need to lift that stone, but I really appreciate you coming on, Zach, and taking your time. I know you got a really busy schedule. I think what you're doing for work now is pretty fascinating. I'm sure people.
Sounds awesome.
I know. I wish I'm like, I just want to get into that more, but there's so much to cover. We'll have to do this again. Now that we've got all the introduction out of the way and, kind of told a little bit of story, we can go more into the meat of some stuff in a future episode. But again, just want, you to get what you want out there. Of course, there's strongmantechnique.com. I'm sure people can get a hold of you there. How else can people get a hold of you if they, want to book a seminar, or if you do, remote coaching, all of that stuff?
Yeah. So I actually used to do programming and remote coaching, but I found that that's just really time consuming.
It sure is.
And I feel that I can make a larger difference focusing on seminars. But anyway, the way that they can get a hold of me, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. They can contact me through strongmantechnique.com, but I feel that the best way to get a hold of me is just shoot an email over to Zack McCarley @gmail.com. That's Zack with a K. So ZACKMCCARLEY @gmail.com. So those individuals who are interested in setting up seminars, that's probably the quickest and easiest way to reach me.
Absolutely. And if you have any coming up, we'll of course, I'll help you promote them as well on, starting strongman and all of that. And it's Zack McCarley, all one word, on Instagram, and Zack McCarley on Facebook. If there's nothing else you want to get off your chest immediately, before we do a follow up with this, because this was great. Appreciate it. Hope you have a good 2017 and get some of these seminars booked for Strongman Technique, and appreciate you coming on Strong Talk, Zach.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I do have one other thing to say.
Absolutely.
There will be a seminar being held January 21st in Oregon City at Inner Beast CrossFit. So that's Oregon City, Oregon. So for those people in the Portland area, Inner Beast CrossFit, January 21st, Strongman Seminar.
Awesome. And and how do people purchase tickets for that?
I would just go to Facebook. You can find that event, and then the way that I like to run that is I just have them send me an email, because I handle all of the signups personally, and there is a cap. I like to keep the seminars under or at 10 people, because any more than that, I don't feel that I can give each participant the adequate amount of time that is necessary to give them the right kind of feedback. So,
yeah, especially if you're going through 5 events.
There's extremely limited space. So I like to have people email me. I can tell them then and there, yes,